Hello, my name is Martin, and I want to show you how I saved up 30k in my first 2 working years after I finished uni. The reason I'm making this video is because I've learned quite a lot in the last 2 years, and I want to impart some of that knowledge onto anyone who wants to learn about saving. I know saving is hard, but I promise you, the positive feeling that you're gonna have once you have good savings way outweighs any challenges that you would have faced along the way getting there. I didn't know anything about money growing up. The only thing I'd heard is that there's not enough of it. And I started my financial education way too late, around when I was 25. So I'm hoping that you will not do the same mistakes. Yeah, I hope that by watching you see what's possible and you also get excited about living within your means. Just a brief timeline of the events I'm going to talk about so you can follow easier. There was me going to uni, then there was my first job, and then there was my second job. In order to see how I got to 30k, we must first think about where I started from. I don't know how much money I actually had before uni, because my bank statements only let me go back 7 years, which is another good reason, by the way, why you want to record your money independently. I'm going to get to that. But by the second month of uni, I can see that I had 600 bucks in the bank. So let's assume that I had 0, because that's easier to count with. Actually, going to uni was responsible for me having some savings in a weird kind of way. Being at uni is great for learning how to save better, because you're really broke during the whole uni period, or at least I was. You have such a little amount of money that you have to look after that it makes it easier to control that amount of money. It's kind of like, imagine you had a little boat and there was a hole in it and water was leaking through. Well, you would see that straight away because the boat is so little. Whereas if you had a huge yacht, you wouldn't really be able to see any, leaks as easy. The second thing that happened at uni, and this is, by the way, all the way in final year, is that we got an email saying that, hey, there's this platform, it's free, it's for students, and it wants to teach you stuff about money. The platform's called Black Bullion, and it has really high quality videos which show you everything that you might want to know about money. It covers all the main topics and then goes deep into some other ones, such as investing. So, you're going to learn about budgeting, credit cards, going to uni, loans, this kind of thing. Shortly after I studied with Black Bullion, I think I started my first budget sheet. You can see how much money I had coming in, how much I was paying for rent, and then how much I was left after rent. And then I divided that by 9 months, which is how long I was at uni in last year. And then I had some help from my parents, thank you parents. And that's how much I had to work with. It's very simple, it's just very simple formulas, but it was very helpful. The biggest money that I actually had starting off with came from a bursary, which is kind of like a grant. I received it because I was coming from a disadvantaged background, or because my parents hadn't gone to uni, something like this. But what I did with it straight away was I put it into a separate account, so I wouldn't be tempted to spend it by seeing all those more digits in my current account. My big break came after uni, about 6 months after I graduated, when an old boss of mine called me over for a beer, and he told me that they need someone to go to Berlin for 10 months and shoot a Netflix series. The job really had some saving advantages, but the biggest change that happened in the next year was really in my own mindset. First, I'm going to tell you about the job. Because it was abroad, they had 2 houses, so I wasn't paying any rent during that time, because I was still living with my parents back home, and rent is one of the biggest expenses you're gonna have. So at this point in time as well, I knew nothing about the advantages of being employed versus freelance, but somehow I've learned about them now. Basically, it's to do with tax, when tax is gonna be your biggest expense. When you're employed, you pay tax on your income, which is your salary. But when you're freelance or have your own business, you're going to pay tax on your profit, which is your income minus your expenses. So this worked out for me in some ways, because you can offset some of your profits by purchasing stuff that you kind of need for your business. But without a doubt, the biggest change that happened to me in that year was realizing that I knew nothing about money. I'd just been broke for the past 4 years, living as a student, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I'm gonna have some money, but I don't know what to do with it. Up till now, the only blueprints I had for how to manage money came from my parents. And the way they learned those lessons was living a long life, making loads of mistakes, and then learning from those mistakes. But mistakes are expensive. Warren Buffett, one of the world's most famous investors, says the number one rule to investing is don't lose any money. Because when you've lost that money, you now have to earn it again before you can even consider investing it. In the next few months, I read 5 books on personal finance and I completed 2 courses. I was now armed with a mindset as well as techniques on how to save, how to even think about money. The way I more or less doubled my savings in my second working year was that I lucked out big time once, and then I had 3 smaller but significant changes in the way I saved. The way I lucked out big time was that, well, in the last month of the project, I met my girlfriend. And by around the 3rd date, I realized that, okay, I like her, so I'm gonna have to move here and find an apartment and find a job. We wanted to take it slow because we're still a new couple, so we moved in together. Jokes aside, the idea was that we would, live together for a time being until I find my own place, and then I would move out. But after 3 months or so of searching for apartments in the morning before work, we just looked at each other and was like, hey, I like living with you. A side effect of living together was that you actually can split the rent, which was significant. If I lived alone, I would have paid maybe like $1,000 a month. As we lived together, we paid half of that. So it's the difference between spending 12 grand on your rent or 6 grand. I mean, that extra 6 grand you could save up. And I know not everyone is going to be able to meet the level of their life. Everyone can consider living with other people, because you can split the rent and then it's cheaper. You remember those books I mentioned earlier? Well, the key thing I learned from those books was to track my spending. This sounds like a big chore, and I promise you this part isn't, but you need to know where your money goes, because if you don't, then how are you gonna do something about it? What gets managed gets changed? What gets measured gets managed? Something like this. So I got this idea from a book called Your Money or Your Life, and in it the author urges you to track everything. I recommend an app called Easy Budget. It's free and it's very simple, which is actually going to work out to your advantage. Because it's simple, you're going to be the one who's responsible for kind of writing what everything you spent was. Some apps or some other services automatically group those up into categories for you. But those categories are not useful to you, they're useful to the general public. So once you've tracked everything for a month, then you're gonna sit down. Now this part is boring and I am behind, but you're gonna sit down and then you're gonna group those expenses up into your own categories. And then once you've done that you only have to do once, luckily. But once you've done that, then you could assign how much money you spent in each of those categories with a value on how fulfilling that thing was, how alignment that was with your values, and as well as how would that spending change if you were financially independent. This sounds really boring. Who the hell wants to do extra work, and who also wants to manage to find a time once a month to do this thing? I understand your skepticism, but I think this is actually the process of where you're gonna rewire your brain on what money is. Until now, all your habits have been unconscious, you know? You don't realize it, but you do have habits. You do have your own way of thinking and seeing about money. And it's only by writing them down and looking at them once a month are you able to change those habits. Until now, you might have heard me mention that I had one current account and one savings account. You have one account where you have money coming in, and then you move some of that money into the other account, which is for your expenses. In advance, you've calculated how much you need to spend a month, and you put exactly that number into the expenses account. This way you know that you can spend whatever is in there and be happy with yourself that you still saved up a portion. There's a problem with this though, is that sometimes you're gonna spend more than usual. You might wanna go on holiday, you might make a big purchase, and then you're gonna have to move money from the incoming account to the expenses account. And this might happen several times a month. So it actually defeats the point. But actually the real problem with this is that something I learned. No matter what you put in the expenses account, you will spend it. Even if you have a slow month, even if you don't go on holiday or make any big purchases, because the money is there, you're instinctively thinking there is more money to spend it and I'm gonna spend it. Now you might say, come on, I've worked and I should be entitled to spend some of my money and have fun with it. And this is true, but would you rather spend that money on, I don't know, eating fast food a few times, or would you rather spend that money on going on holiday or making some kind of bigger purchase? This is what my new system is made to address. It's called the 3-pot system. And basically you have one pot for your incoming, and this is what you're gonna consider as your investment pot. So over time, you're gonna maybe invest this money or put it into a fixed term savings account. But for now, you're gonna pretend like this money is untouchable to you, because it kind of will be if you do one of those things. And then you have a separate pot where you put your savings. Now this is kind of like your short-term savings. So you're saving up for a holiday or a new computer or something like this. That is where you're gonna build up capital, and then once you have enough, you're gonna take from there for those big purchases. Meanwhile, your expenses pot, that is gonna be for your rent, for your food, for your phone bill and stuff like this. This way, you're being very strict with yourself. You're gonna have even less money to spend during the month. But that's okay, because each month you're seeing those other 2 pots grow. And the last tactic that I've learned and that I encourage you to try is the 1% rule. This is really simple. Before I get to that, I just want to give you some context on how I use the 3-pot system. I created a simple Excel spreadsheet, and within it you can type in the value that you earned in a month. Let's say this month I earned 3K, and then it will automatically calculate how much you're going to put in each pot. The way you can use this for your 1% rule is simply copy the sheet and each month go 1% higher, and then the values will change. Now, if you have 3 pots, then I would think about it as the 0.5% rule, because actually with 1%, you're going up 2% every month, and that is challenging. But the idea behind it is that you're going to only marginally increase the amount of your savings each month. So much so that you won't even notice it. But each month you're getting used to living with even smaller means, which means that your savings pot is going up higher. And here you can see from October to February, which is only 4 months, but I increased my savings by, well, it's like 60, yeah, like nearing 100. I did earn slightly more on that month, but nearing €100 extra. And I didn't even notice it because it was such a slow burn. So how did I actually save 30K? Well, ironically, it was by spending money and time on learning about saving money. Sometimes you might have to spend some money to make some money, you know, and this is definitely one of those cases. Anyone on the street can give you the simple advice of, hey, just save up more money, spend less on stuff. And This is very easy to understand, but to actually like integrate it into your mindset, you're gonna have to learn and read and study and watch. And that's okay, because actually it's not so boring. We like money, we find money interesting. And when you're reading from chapter to chapter, you're gonna learn things and have little mini breakthroughs for yourself. You're gonna be like, and oh, so that's how that works. And these kinds of things are gonna be inspiring you to keep going and learning about it. In the last 2 years, I learned quite a lot of lessons about saving money up, and now it's time for you to learn yours. What am I gonna do with the money? Well, personally, I'm investing it in this very channel that you're watching. Having savings allows me to live without income for some time and work on this channel full time, basically. But being my own boss is tricky, and there were some things which I didn't anticipate, such as being able to set myself a good schedule and to wake up early on time. My last video was about giving you tips on how to wake up early, so if you're interested, maybe consider watching that. Thanks for watching on this video. Any feedback is highly appreciated, and I'll see you soon. You have such a little amount of